Operations and Regulations meeting to order. This meeting will be co-chaired by myself and Chair Bradford. For Budget and Finance, we do have 13 of our 15 members present right now, so we do have a quorum. And for Gov Ops,
I'm showing 9 members present. We have a quorum.
Okay.
I show 9 members present, so we do have a quorum.
Thank you so very much. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to kick this over to Director Durbin from ITS, as well as Michelle Lane Hernandez from Finance. No? Oh, sorry. I was looking at Michelle Hernandez Lane. Sorry, y'all, from Finance, and they will be leading this presentation. We will be taking up questions at the end if any committee members or anyone not on the committee that has questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Keith Durbin. I am Metro's Chief Information Officer and Director of the Information Technology Services Department. I have served in this role for 15 years in 2 weeks, and prior to that, I had a 1.5-year tenure in this body as the council member from District 18. So I very much appreciate the time and diligence you've taken in asking questions about these two bills we have in front of you. What I've done for you is I put together a short presentation at which I will address both bills, the Carasoft and the NetTango bills, and hopefully answer some of your questions proactively. And we will hold questions to the end per the chair's advice. So the first thing I would like to do is I would like to cut a distinction between the two bills that we have in front of us. So you have the NetTango bill, which is 01, and then you have the Carasoft bill, which is 81. So the first distinction between the two of them is, first off, the NetTango bill, the absolute core purpose of that is to provide website development expertise. So it is people's time. The Carasoft bill, on the other hand, is a cooperative purchasing agreement based on pre-negotiated base terms with hundreds of different vendors. Whereas NetTango is a single vendor, Carasoft is a cooperative of many vendors. Next, NetTango contract has a set price that exists in the contract for the services that they would provide, whereas the Carasoft contract, per their website and per conversation with Carasoft, the pricing that you see in that attachment is for a unit of one. So what you see there is what the base price is. That is the ceiling price that we would pay based on that one unit purchase, and we typically won't do ever one unit purchases. And then finally, NetTango is being used by Nashville.gov, the library, MDHA, Music City Center for our purposes. It could be used by anybody. And then the Carasoft contract could be used by any organization within Metro government. And the distinction between are those core items. And I think the confusion came into play in that a vendor, Acquia, which provides hosting services for NetTango, is being purchased off the Carasoft contract. So that's where the confusion came into play. So starting with the Carasoft contract, we ask that the council office forward a memo on Friday afternoon from myself and Michelle that has requested Madam Chair to withdraw this legislation. So my understanding is that the Madam Chair will withdraw that legislation tomorrow afternoon. And there are a couple of reasons that we have made this request. First off, our original plan in needing to acquire goods or services from the Carasoft contract was to piggyback on the state contract. So many states, Tennessee is just one of them, uses their bulk purchasing power to gain a leverage over vendors and get better pricing. So we had anticipated using the state contract. However, in researching that, Michelle's team found that without the ability to set our own terms around certain things, specifically cybersecurity, her understanding or their understanding at the time that we could not do that, and we have our own standards around cybersecurity. Based on our understanding at the time, we chose to go for our own Metro contract. Recently, Michelle's team found that that was a misunderstanding and that absolutely we could negotiate our own terms and set our own standards around things like cybersecurity with Carasoft. So the recommendation was made then that we go ahead and just pull this legislation and continue with the procurement through piggybacking off the state contract. So that is the memo, the rationales that were laid out in the memo from Mary Jo and myself and Michelle. And that is the plan at this point. And that's all I had to say at this point around Carasoft. And moving on to NetTango. So NetTango, Bill BL 23-1, is for our website maintenance contract, hours. So I want to back up a little bit, and rather than just jump right into the issue of those services, I want to talk a little bit about Nashville.gov and fill you all in on a few items of interest, or I think are of interest to this group. First off, there is a vision for Nashville.gov that was laid out back in 2017, 2018 timeframe. First off, that vision encompassed a customer service focus first, whereas a department who owns content is the master of that content and can present that content on Nashville.gov as they see fit. So it's not coming through ITS or some central communications department. Rather, the police department is publishing police data, planning is publishing planning data on the website. Secondly, the goal was to emphasize popular services. So in the past, government websites were organized around departments. So if you wanted to learn information about sidewalks or lost animals, you had to know to go to Metro Animal Control to find lost animals, and you had to know to go to the former Public Works Department to find sidewalks. Today, we have those things developed into services that appear on the top of Nashville.gov, the homepage, as well as on each of the individual further websites. Those things, furthermore, are hooked into Hub Nashville, which is our central source of services and service requests for the government. We also, with this version of Nashville.gov, wanted to make sure that we had a robust search engine. Not everybody wants to go through a navigational structure. Many people search for the items they find. So we went with a leading industry search engine called SearchStacks that uses machine learning to develop over time and get better and better at its results that are presented. And then finally, at the time, we had seen the emergence of mobile technology as critical, and so Nashville.gov that you see today is built with a mobile-first mindset, and I'll show you some statistics a little bit later on that shows that played out. Secondly, Nashville.gov was always envisioned to be compliance-oriented, and key among those is ADA compliance. So Nashville.gov is very stringently managed for ADA compliance at every level. We score very well if you look at an ADA compliance monitoring tool, and we work really hard both at the department level as well as my team level to ensure as complete a compliance to that as we can. And then secondly, Nashville.gov was also designed to be Metro Code compliant. So in Metro Code, it states that my department will run the website, and the website will have a official calendar of events and other things like that. And so those items were built into Nashville.gov from the beginning. And then finally, kind of one of the underlying things that everything the ITS department does is we have a heavy reliance on security, reliability, and availability in everything we do. And so that was built in to the structure of Nashville.gov, and NetTangle plays a large part in that. Some analytics that I think are worthwhile noting about Nashville.gov. First off, from a traffic perspective, year to date, as of about a week ago, 16 million page views, 5.4 million users, and an average time on the site of around 2 minutes. And then back to our philosophy of mobile first, as of last week, 63% of our website users were on mobile devices. And we have seen that increasing over time, and we see no reason for that to abate. And from an availability standpoint, we monitor availability very closely. If there is an outage of some sort over 30 seconds that is not planned, we immediately get notices on that and we address it. So we're 99.95% uptime. And then from a search analytics perspective, almost 300,000 search sections year to date with 660,000 total searches, 2.23 searches per section. An average click position, which is how far down in the list of search results the selection that is made, is 3.1, and only 2.3% of searches come up with 0 results. All right. A question was asked by a council member whether we had a sitemap. And we asked our NetTangle if they had a sitemap, and that is not something they had. So I included in the documents that I sent to you a tool that they ran that delineated all 14,000 plus pages on Nashville.gov linked in a hierarchy. We then took that and produced this high-level sitemap, which is only at the very top level of the website. And so I'll just point out a couple of things for you. First off, in the kind of robin's egg blue, we have the main links off the homepage. The light blue areas indicate the search and site translation features that the site has. In the middle, you have the green section of the major sites that are found on the homepage, which are council office, clerk, kind of the top level department site. And then the yellow over at the left shows that we host web pages for 81 boards and commission. And then in the pink are the 60 departments and agencies that we have links to on Nashville.gov. In the gray are links to features and websites that are outside of the Nashville.gov arena, but are linked. And so, for example, not all departments and agencies actually host their websites on Nashville.gov. The property assessor is an example. Her website is a external site. The sheriff is an external site, the Arts Commission, but those do have landing pages and their sites can be searched by Nashville.gov. I would also talk a little bit at this point, understanding that how the philosophy of the site is that departments own their content. They are responsible for the treatment of their sites. And that is to show you a little bit about the responsibilities that are managed internal to Metro and the NetTangle contract by 3 separate groups of people. So first off, you have department content owners. Department content owners within each department and agency, for example, in the planning department, planning understands their content best. And so they are the subject matter experts. They write content, they produce content, they lay out the way their site wants to work, and that they're responsible for that first wave of ADA compliance work. The ITS web team then is responsible for reviewing posts that are made by department content owners. We train content owners. We are the kind of the last review for ADA compliance. We do final quality control, and then we test the site when new features come out. And so there is this constant interaction and interplay between the departmental content owners and the ITS web team. And then the third group that's important for this communication is NetTango. So NetTango is a remote organization of developers. So when we need new features, functionality on the site, they develop and support that code. So the ITS Web Team does not support code. That's what we have a NetTango contract for. They also help us for business continuity and disaster recovery mitigation, security. And then they also help our liaisons between us and vendors for things like that Acquia contract I mentioned earlier. And then they also have expertise in user interface and user experience design. And again, there is constant interplay as new development takes place, as we have additional requirements or additional needs. We work with them closely on meeting those needs. And NetTango, just a few things about NetTango, and this slide came from NetTango, their owner Susan Weiss, founded in '96. It's a woman-owned business in Louisville, Kentucky, and they are basically a full-service web design and development organization. City of Raleigh, AT&T, Yum Brands, and other are kind of marquee customers for them, as is Metro Nashville government. And one of the questions in the set of questions from council members was, I love the phraseology here, is what's the origin story of Metro's relationship with NetTango? They answered an RFP in, I think it was 2011, very, very well, and they won an RFP. A competitively bid RFP, and then they won it again 6 years later. And that is the origin story. And that experience led us to, and the working together with them led us to a very fruitful relationship with them. One of the things, well, I'll move on. So we do have some current activities that are planned now with NetTango through the end of a current PO. Next month, we are scheduled to upgrade the site, the platform underneath the site to Drupal 10, which is the latest version, which came out a year ago, and PHP 8, which I think 8.1 is the absolute latest version of PHP. PHP is the language, as it were, for dynamic website content, and Drupal is the content management system. So the goal is, we've been testing those with NetTango, and the goal is to upgrade the site to those in early January. And then there are some other site upgrades that have already been planned, and these are relatively minor things. Again, mobile view is important, some updates there, some additional filters to make the calendar more usable on the home page. Auto suggest, which you see on Google and other search sites, will be improved, and then performance improvements. And then the last item, which is not funded yet, but the mayor last month, when we met with him and talked about his desired path moving forward with technology, and one of his things that's very important to him is Nashville.gov and Hub Nashville and the usability of these tools. So we committed to him at that time that we would work toward a user interface, user experience review for 2024. And we were looking to engage NetTango, who has the tool sets, who has expertise in this arena, to perform that analysis with us. And as a part of that, we have been asked to put together a UI UX task force as well, to bring together groups of people to actually inform that work moving forward. So you can expect that UI UX task force to form during the month of January. Term considerations. There was conversation last week with Madam Chair about a late filed amendment and it reads that ITS will report back to this body in year 3 of the 5-year contract with NetTango. And I am happy to do that, to give a report on the status of the website, the progress we've made from a user interface, user experience perspective, user satisfaction. And that also additionally, ITS is to consult with Metro Council at about year 4.5 of this contract as well, prior to ITS taking the option or not of renewing the contract at for another 5 years. At this point, I'll just tell you, I do not see that happening based on the conversations that we've had over the last couple of weeks. But that is what we agreed to last week. And I very much support this late filed amendment. It's not late filed. Okay, sorry about that. It's not late filed, according to Director Darby. And then one final slide I wanted to share with you is that there was an article within the last couple of months about Chattanooga has planned a new website. And I'd like to tell you a few things about it. We reached out to them, got some information from them. First off, their current site, which went live in 2012, is not service-based, which is the current model that everybody follows when they're doing a new site. It's not mobile friendly, meaning it's not written to be used on mobile devices, and it is not ADA accessible. Note that all of those things we built into Nashville.gov in 2018 when we started rebuilding the current version of Nashville.gov. They awarded their RFP, which it was a competitive RFP, to a Brazil-based company, CINT. And they have been given a project plan of a year to turn around their website at a cost of $998,000. They also tellingly consulted with Boston.gov, who kind of led the field back in 2016 with a service-based website. And Boston.gov spent about $1 million in 2016 on their website. Do know that Nashville.gov, another comparison's worth pointing out. Chattanooga has 15 departments and agencies versus Metro's 60 departments and agencies and 81 boards and commissions, and that Metro's fixed price for the creation of the new Nashville.gov and the migration was $514,000 for what ended up being about a year and a half, 2-year redevelopment and migration process. So thank you for your time. Thank you for obliging me with the opportunity to present details about these two contracts for you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Durbin. I will start off with Chair Bradford. Do you have any questions or concerns? Okay. I have 2 questions, and then we will open it up to the body. I am pleasantly surprised about one thing, and I know I brought this up to you, Director Durbin, which was about the search function. And historically, when I have searched for something on Nashville.gov, I've had a hard time finding it. It's showing up so far down in the search results. I know the data that you shows that the average click position is 3.1. So those items are showing up, I guess, about third on the thing. While you were talking, I searched for several things, and everything I searched for showed up in the first results. So thank you all for fixing that. I don't know what y'all did differently, but that wasn't happening last week. So thank you for updating that. I did have one question about the most popular services, which is on the homepage. Are you all using data to determine the most popular services, and how often is that updated? Because like I see apply for a dance residency up here. I don't know what that is. I don't know. I'm sure somebody's got to be searching for it if y'all are using data to get that. But I would think that people are searching for trash pickup more than they're searching for that. So could you speak to like how often that's updated, and how do you all determine which services are the most popular for that homepage?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So on a monthly basis, we can run the search reports at any time to show us the top 100 or however many search results that we would like to see. And so on a monthly basis, they take those and they massage those services accordingly. So you should see those adjusting about the beginning of the month. And yes, that many people really are searching for some sort of dance event at parks. So we had that discussion last week, and that is absolutely the case.
That is amazing. I didn't know we had dance residency. So thank you for sharing that. And then just one more thing really briefly, and then Councilmember Huffman, you're going to be recognized. I did want to just clear up something with the amendment, just so that everyone will kind of understand the intent behind that, with giving the director the opportunity to come back before us for 3 years. If the body determines that they don't want to move forward with the contract, that will give the director about 2 years to find a new entity to move forward with, so that we're not in a situation where we're scrambling at the last minute and under the gun to make decisions. So by addressing it at the 3-year mark, if the body determines that they don't want to move forward, the director then has 2 years to look into this. If the body decides that they do want to move forward, then great, no harm, no foul, no harm, no foul. And then addressing it again 6 months prior to the end of the contract will give us another bite at the apple to make a determination of, before we go back into this, for another 5 years or so, what does this look like? Do we need to go ahead and go forward with this, or are there any other considerations that may have come up between the 3-year and the 4.5-year mark? So I just wanted to make sure that you all kind of had a good understanding of the thought process behind that. And with that, Councilmember Huffman, Director Durbin, did you want to say something to that?
I just wanted to thank you for validating that. The way, or reminding, since I forgot to say that. Yes, what we would anticipate is a 2-year period would give us enough time to go out to a competitive RFP, get that an award, and get a development and content migration process moving in the amount of time that we feel is necessary. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Durbin. Councilmember Huffman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Durbin, for the presentation and coming here to the chambers just to walk us through the contract. I think that that's very helpful. I think everybody knows I'm the cause of the late meeting and the reason that everybody's here for this one tonight. And I want to really reassure you regarding a couple of things. The first is that I feel like we're on a good path now. There was a lot of unknowns before regarding the website itself and the future of it. The UX UI task force is going to be a big player with this. Very much looking forward to see what happens in the conversation in 2024 regarding that. Looking at Raleigh's website as we are talking, and I'm browsing on my mobile phone, which to your point, most people do nowadays. I find a couple of things that are very intuitive. They've got a nice menu item that collapses and is accessible. They have predictable search, 2 things that we can continue that conversation on into 2024. So no questions necessarily around NetTango. Now, Carousof's a different story. I've got some questions in regards to that that I'd like to address to see if we could get answered. The first is in regards to the services compared to the state contract. How do those compare, and do we lose anything between the two?
You want to take that?
We are going to let, now I'm confused on which is first, Hernandez or Lane. We're going to let
Hernandez.
our procurement director answer that question. You're recognized.
Are you able to hear me? Is my mic on? There it is. Well, in terms of the very specific services that our ITS department would be using related to that contract, I would certainly defer to Director Durbin. But I will tell you that related to the cooperative details and what was in the original request that was before this body, that those were comparable. In fact, what we requested initially by the way of a sole source was based on what was in the original statewide contract that we considered. Our advice had been that we were unable to modify any of those terms and conditions, including specific details around cybersecurity. State law specifies that we buy consistent with the terms and conditions of those contracts as they are present. But the reach out that I did was to say, look, for all of the various cities that are in the state of Tennessee who are able to use a statewide contract, certainly there are going to be some end user specifics that need to be considered on a city by city, jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. And in the conversation with the contract administrator for the state of Tennessee, he confirmed that absolutely their expectation would be that we would be negotiating those end user specifications on an as needed basis on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. So you're going to see those terms and conditions be the same, but now with some more specificity in the end user license agreement around information security specific to Metro.
Thank you. Director Durbin, would it be possible to get just a comparative list? I would be very interested in just seeing what we've got between the two, just to compare apples and oranges.
Absolutely.
Revisiting an item that we talked about back in Budget and Finance on the 18th of November regarding Carasoft was the length that this item was in procurement. Could I just have someone confirm that for me really quick? The Carasoft agreement, the time that it was in procurement.
I can provide a timeline for you. I have a timeline, but for whatever reason, I'm unable to connect to the network today. That's rich. I'm not able to connect to the network, but I can absolutely send that to Director Darby. Darby. I got Durbin on one side and Darby on the other. But we did look into the length of that, and I will also acknowledge that as it relates to, I think it was roughly 9 months, just to give you a snapshot. But with the state of Tennessee and talking with their contract administrator, my understanding is that it took them roughly a year to fully negotiate the products list for the Carasoft contract statewide.
If you could confirm that, that would be great. I'm just checking my notes from that meeting, and I think that what we had was 2 years on that, which is why I brought it up.
Okay.
But if you could just double check that.
Will do.
So, okay, thank you. Yeah, and if that's the case, the length in procurement, the next question I have is why that the state contract was sought. Was it just directly after the deferral that the council had against the Carasoft agreement? What was the thinking behind that?
The thinking behind why to look back toward the statewide contract?
The timing, yeah.
I believe it was Councilmember Evans Segal. The very first question that she asked was, did we consider the statewide contract? Councilmember Zwar also asked that question because there was some specific detail in the legislative packet that indicated that we'd made some effort to look toward the statewide contract. And so we looked back to it again in the discussion with ITS as well as others in finance as to, what we thought we knew about our ability to make modifications to the end user license agreement to confirm that that was correct, especially with some specific interest around improvement to the procurement process. I think Councilmember Toombs very specifically discussed, some potential improvements to the process. And so to the point, if we've got the ability to leverage a statewide contract, and that was our initial intention, our thought was that we should go back to that and consider whether or not there was some opportunity to do that, especially in light of the advice from council members.
Thank you. And the last question, and then I'll give my colleagues a chance. Director Durbin, in regards to the state contract itself, are we required, and you may have already said this, and I apologize if you did, but are we required to provide any extra level of security between us and the state to issue licenses to our users?
Can you explain? I'm not following. What do you mean extra layer of security?
I didn't know if, since we are dealing with state and local government, if we were to provide a license to, let's say, me for something that would be provided through this contract, if there would have to be any encryption or hashing that would take place.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is not, we are using the state contract, but it is actually our contract, so the state is not involved at that point.
So if I could add just a little bit based on my knowledge of the statewide contract, that statewide contract is available for use by a variety of different state departments. It is also available for use by jurisdictions, political subdivisions of the state of Tennessee. If individual political subdivisions opt to use that statewide contract, there is specificity that is particular to that jurisdiction that would be borne out in the EULA, in the end user license agreement, that would be particular to them. That is where we were unclear, based on advice that we'd received, that we were unable to make those modifications, which is why we attempted to mirror what we would have done against the statewide contract in a sole source effort. But then, of course, after the discussion here and some specific requests as to why we didn't consider the statewide contract, we revisited it. And what we know is that we would add more definition in the end user license agreement to account for any specific, information security issues or concerns that our chief information security officer would deem necessary specific to Metro.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you for those excellent questions, Councilmember Huffman. I have Councilwoman Sarour, followed by Councilwoman Evans, and then Councilwoman Ellis. Councilmember Sarour, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I think it was very great to hear, and thanks, Chair, for the amendment. I think we were thinking along the same line. I wanted to actually just to do 5 years and don't do 10 years, and I think the way you have it, the way you come back is actually better. So on the Caresoft, I have two questions. One is there a change in pricing from our sole source and then when we do go to the state? The second question that I have is that my understanding of the letter that is written is that when we do use the state contracts, then it does bypass council, that it does not require council approval. So will there be a change in the cost? And then since it's not coming to council, I think it's very important for me to know if there's anything changing in the numbers, whether it goes up or goes down, or what the difference will look like.
So as it relates to, I'll take your second question first because it's actually the easier of the two questions. State law does not require department or jurisdictions who use statewide contracts to obtain approval of the local elected, the legislative body. Metro Code does not require that as well. So whenever we make purchases off a statewide contract, those purchases actually can be issued just purchase orders with the specifications of that contract attached to those. So that is correct. As it relates to the pricing, there's specific pricing in those contracts, but the amounts, as you can imagine, can vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction based on volume and et cetera. So you're going to see minimum amounts that are in those contracts, and greater amounts can be negotiated based upon needs. But the contract specifies that minimum amount. So to the point of your question about whether or not they're subject to change, they're subject to change in the sense that we could have improved pricing, but not any less than what the contract requires by the way of a % discount. Does that make sense?
It does, and I guess where I'm still stuck, and it might require my talking offline with your council, is the fact that now we're going to the state. What if we want to spend more? Because I know part of the conversation on the floor is not just the process, the IT, is also the value as well. And so if we're going to go to one that costs us more money and it bypasses body entirely, what does that mean? I think that's what I'm trying to get to. And I'll follow it up and see what that means. So how do we make sure that we stay abreast of it so that we're looking at the money that is being spent as well?
Yes, please, sorry.
Yeah, the statute does not require this legislative body to approve those purchases. That does not preclude us providing information upon request to this body in order for you to operate in your oversight capacity. So upon the request, we're happy to provide, whatever information that we have available in concert with the ITS department.
I appreciate it. I think that would be that would be appreciated, just to make sure that we know what happened after the bill is killed, then what happened after that and how much did it cost us. And my last question, for those of us that are not computer experts, I won't say geeks like my colleague, what is UI and UX?
UI, UX, is, I thought I defined it at first, but I did a bad job at it. User interface and user experience. So user interface is the look and the feel, of a website. User experience is the how you navigate, are things laid out appropriately? Are they logical to the average person? And so the combination of those two things, you obviously want a very good user interface and a good user experience as well. Thank you for asking that question, though I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Soror. Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions, and the original reason why I was wanted to defer really was to allow the administration higher time to kind of get on board and review everything, just to make sure that we were aligned with the administration's goals. So I intend on supporting everything tomorrow night. But in hearing the description about the content, I guess one question that I have with us being reliant on departments to be making updates, what is, do we have a process? Does IT go back to them and say, you haven't updated your page in, 2 years? Or, I mean, do we have any kind of remedy for departments that may let that get away from them? Or if they have turnover and maybe somebody doesn't know how to do the updates, like what does that look like?
So a couple of answers to your question. So first off, the model, again, is a department owns their own content and their own website. And again, we have 14,000 pages on Nashville.gov a variety of times. So if the planning department is the only organization that would know their content is out of date, and so it is incumbent upon them. So we provide them many different types of tools. The searches that I mentioned, we provide those on a monthly basis. At the bottom of each website, there is a feedback tool that every single page on Nashville.gov has. We provide that data on a monthly basis as well in order for them to get feedback from the community on what's there. What we provide for them is, again, when they do change something, we give it a final look-see to make sure that, spellings, grammar, ADA compliance, but we rely on the departments and agencies to own that content. So I'm a member of a big city CIO group, and I put a question out to that group a week ago. And 201, the model that is used across the country that I've seen, that group has seen, including I heard back from the CIOs of Seattle and of Boise, is basically the same thing we do, is that the central IT shop provides the platform, departments own the content, they are responsible for that content, and the central IT department then kind of validates it. The only variance on that model that people brought up is that some organizations, I guess smaller cities or counties, the role, that second role, that validation role is out of the IT organization into a central communications for the government model. I also spoke to Gartner last week, who's a big IT consultancy. They also have advice, and basically it was validated that those two are kind of the models in the industry, because an IT organization or a central communications organization can't understand everything that every organization is doing.
Okay, so what you're saying makes sense, but I guess I'm thinking about so we don't really have, I guess, a metro standard for departments to be validating their own content.
No, I would disagree with that. I mean, when a department comes on to Nashville.gov, or when they have someone who is new to doing content, they go through training, they are told the expectations, and then it is up to, this organization, if you are interested in some specific metric or look back, I think that would be something that we could communicate to departments. At this point, Nashville.gov it is the front door to Metro government, and so departments and agencies certainly want their content to be up to date. And if it is not, every instance I've come across in my 15 years is people want to know when there is some piece of content that is incorrect.
I hear what you're saying, and we may just have a difference. I guess I'm just looking for, we're not saying like every 2 years, you should touch all of your content departments and make sure it's still accurate and viable outside of the feedback tool. And users saying, hey, this looks out of date or, whatever. So that's, so anyway, I'm just kind of processing that. So thank you for your feedback on that part. And then I guess as far as the structure on the ITS side, you all don't have a web developer on your team, right?
We do not. We do not have a development staff. We have a buy and configure model. So we buy the services and then we configure and then we manage and administer. And so that's why NetTango is so important, is that they actually develop new features and functionalities.
Thank you. And then I guess kind of going back to the origin story question, since I asked that on the internet. I guess as far as the looking at the NetTango website, they were involved with a variety of metro or kind of, Music City Center and MDHA and that kind of thing. And so really it was part of the procurement process. They happened to win the contracts for those 3 entities, including us. And that's how they became responsible for us. And so I guess then the question really for Director Lane is around, they were the cheapest provider?
So our engagement with NetTango was based upon an RFP, which is a best value effort. So we're looking at a variety of different factors. Cost is one of those, but it's not the sole determinant. We're looking to get the best service for the best price, not just the lowest price.
Okay.
So the aggregate of all of their offering, including their qualifications and experience, their business plan of approach to meet the needs of metro government and their cost, yielded the best value overall of all the competitors.
Thank you for that information. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. So I've got a little bit of a queue going here. Next, we have Councilmember Ellis, followed by Councilmember Evans Siegel, followed by Councilmember Eastlick. So if anyone else wants to jump in the queue, just wave at me and wink. Councilmember Ellis, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to put on record that I sincerely appreciate you, Director Durbin, and Ms. Lane, Hernandez Lane, for the in-depth knowledge that you all have brought forth with answering the questions of our council members that we have. And I just wanted to serve notice to all the other departments that the bar that you all have set with the knowledge that you have brought forth and your understanding of the jobs that you all have is that expectation that we expect this 2023, 2027 term. We expect this is the bar for all the other departments that are going to come before us when it comes to budgeting season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Evans Siegel, you are recognized.
Thank you. So I think I want to separate, and first I want to thank you for meeting with me and many of my colleagues and answering a lot of questions as we go through this on all these issues. And I want to separate out the vendor from the request for $10 million of approval. Because I think my concerns still stem from the amount of money in this contract, not who the vendor is, right? It looks like in 2 years, based on what you provided, we've spent about $300,000 with NetTango. And then before that, about $500,000 to redo it. So $800,000 over 3 years. So I'm trying to figure out why now we're looking at spending $1 million a year.
So that is the upper contract amount that is we could spend. So we would have to come to you to request funding to be able to spend it. So that's the maximum contract limit that is possible on this contract. If we wanted to spend more than that, we would have to come back to this body to ask for an amendment to be able to spend more. So just because that says $1 million a year does not indicate that that is what is going to be spent.
I guess I still don't quite understand why we're spending about $150,000 a year. Procurement would have approved $1 million a year ceiling. What would that even go to?
Go ahead.
Well, if I could, I think there are kind of two parts to that question. So I'll tackle the part related to the establishment of contract values, because I think that is the specific question that you've got. When we engage solicitations and when we engage these kinds of efforts around, sole source, et cetera, we rely really heavily upon the department who understands their need and the specific historical spend that they've had for related services to establish a maximum liability is what Director Durbin is talking about related to the contract. So that's the maximum that could be spent, but it's got to be spent consistent with whatever pricing mechanism is in the contract. So you could have a contract with a ceiling of $1 million, but you may not spend all of that $1 million. It should be based upon exact services rendered and then the invoices that are there. In terms of the services that are rendered, which I think is the second part of your question, as to how would we get to that amount in terms of services, I would defer to the ITS department.
So again, it's based on, we've got this UX group coming up. We have a potential in 3 years of redoing a website. And then just historically, when we have contracts like this, there are additional groups that come on. Correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but there weren't multiple contracts that were for Music City Center, MDHA, and the library. They came on to our contract. And so what happens in certain circumstances where an organization like ITS will get a contract, and let's say we put $100,000 a year on the contract, well, we have to think long and hard because other groups will come in. Then we've got to come back to this body yet again to ask for more. So we typically put some amount of buffer in just to streamline our processes.
I just think from a procurement standpoint, it would be really helpful if we would consider maybe not an 8X buffer, because as a group that is committed to budget oversight, it makes it incredibly hard to do our jobs and to think about what we're actually spending and what our future liabilities are if we're suddenly padding things to that level. And then I think I also sort of fundamentally struggle with approving this amount of a ceiling when I fundamentally disagree with who your customer is. And I would say that you have two customers. You have all the departments within Metro and everybody who works within Metro, but also the public is a customer. And I saw no recognition in there that the public was part of the customer focus of the structure of our website. I mean, I'm still searching for the word taser to find this lovely dashboard that Councilmember Johnson was so helpful to point out to us, and the dashboard still doesn't come up when you search that word. You cannot find it on MNPD's website. If you are a public customer of the website, you can't use it. You don't know when you want to ride a bike, if you're supposed to go to bikeways and greenways in parks, or NDOT, who maintains bike lanes, to figure out where to go. And so I think as we're going forward looking at UX, UI design, I would just ask that the department remember that as a government, our number one customer is the public. I was a lawyer, I practiced in a big firm. The hardest thing about practicing in a big firm is you have partners who are your clients, and then you have clients who are paying the bills who are your clients. You have to make them both happy. But if the clients who are paying our bills, who are paying taxes, can't use our services because we don't consider them customers, then we're not doing the first job we have. That's all I have on these contracts.
Did you all want to reply to that, or I'll keep going if not? All right, Councilmember Eastlick, you are recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. As I was looking through, I think I saw $155 an hour for regular work and then $310 for overtime or emergency work. How does that tie into the contract? Is there like a certain amount of work per week that we have almost in a salary sense, or is everything per hour?
Thank you for that question. Everything is per need. So there is no set number of hours that they are contracted to work a week. And I think in the questions that I responded, I gave a last 52 weeks or 53 weeks of the hourly that were worked. And that was based solely on the amount of work that we provided to them to do. That overtime would be in a situation where there is some dramatic situation. I am not aware that we have ever paid that overtime rate, but it is something that they would build into a contract like that. So no, there is no per weekly expectation that we are going to spend with them.
And I think the last part, that I don't know if it's a question, but more of a point, the ADEX reference that the $1 million versus what could be spent on the bottom end. Why did we come up with that 1 million per year kind of range? I mean, I heard what you said as far as things could jump in or could be put on there, but as we see the cost of building another website, I mean, it's almost that amount that we'd build, again, a really big site if we were going to hit $1 million a year in that thing. And could this be lowered?
Well, I think the example I gave of the Chattanooga site, Chattanooga has 15 departments and agencies, and they signed a contract within the last 3 or 4 months for $1 million website over 1 year. So if we're in a situation where we're getting ready to do a lot of work, we may push some of those upper limits. But yes, to the council member's point, I mean, it is padded for a number of reasons. First, so that we may take on extra work from Nashville.gov. And then secondly, if there are other organizations within the metro space that are interested in taking advantage of this website contract, like the library, like MDHA, whoever the other one is, took advantage of our contract, it leaves room for that so that we are not slowed down on the process, because when we have a project, we've got a timeline and we want to meet that timeline.
I would think if something that big had to be redone in that amount, that it would warrant coming back to the council and asking for more money. So for myself, I'm still undecided because I feel like the pad is very, very big.
Okay.
Do we have any other, Director Lane, you're recognized.
If I could add just one additional point of clarity related to that. Excuse me. I would note that we establish our contract values, of course, in concert with the procuring or proponent department. But typically, more often than not, we have some departments that don't issue purchase orders quite the way perhaps they ought to. ITS is not one of those departments. The encumbrance happens at the purchase order level. So that's something important to note. There would be a purchase order issued against that contract value, and that's where you would see a hard encumbrance of those funds. So that maximum liability is an amount above which we cannot exceed. It is not a promise of expenditure. The encumbrance is going to happen when the department identifies those specific needs and they issue a purchase order for it. So I just want to add that point of clarity as well related to the contract values.
And Councilman, one other thing I would mention. So again, we do not have funds beyond the work that we're planning on doing in early January and some of the UI UX work. We don't have any kind of big project bucket set aside for any of the work that's happening. So we will be bringing a request for funding. So you'll see what our plans are based on this work group that's getting ready to happen, and you'll see kind of what that looks like. So you'll be able to track kind of what the expectations of what we'd like to do versus, based on what the group says, and then this total potential contract value.
And if we form some kind of task force or group would they be paid out of this fund? And would they work for Net Tango, or would these be government people that would be paid for this? And then would that come out of this fund?
Good question. Thank you for asking that. So for instance, we've asked Councilman Huffman to sit on that. I don't think he expects, at least we didn't discuss him being paid more. I think we'd have a representative from the mayor's office. I think we've talked with the mayor's office about some individuals from the public who'd be volunteers. So there would be no, I mean, Net Tangle may sit on it. We hadn't even talked about that. But then again, they don't necessarily need to unless they are performing the analysis. But the only way Net Tango would be paid for it is if they were actively using that as part of the analysis work that they were doing. And we've just not planned what's happening with this task force yet. But there will be no paid members of it. They would all be volunteers or Metro government employees other than potentially Net Tango.
I would love to see that lowered as far as the headroom that's on there, but I do understand what you're saying. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Eastlick. Chair Bradford, you are recognized.
Thank you. So my question goes back to the conversation Councilmember Evan Seagal was bringing up. And, you know, I get like the $1 million a year. You're wanting to ensure that there's some headroom so that you don't have to keep coming back to the council, you know, every couple of weeks or every couple of months to ask for more money. My question is, kind of going back historically, through our relationship with Net Tango, what's the most that we've ever spent in a year?
I can tell you that the project to develop and implement the current Nashville.gov was $514,000. It took longer than a year to do that. So at that point, that was in 2017 prices as well, 2018, 2019 prices. Prices have gone up since then. That's one of the things we didn't mention. The cost of inflation would be built into that ceiling cap as well. I can find that for you specifically.
I was just going to ask, like, if you could maybe provide, like, since we first signed the contract with Net Tango, how much will we spend each year on the contract? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so very much, Chair Bradford. Do we have any other questions before we take up the legislation? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and take up our legislation. We will allow it to roll through budget first, and I will chair that, and then we will allow it to roll through GovOps, and Chair Bradford will chair that. So for the members of the Budget Committee, BL 2023-1 Porterfield Bradford approves the contract between the Metropolitan Government and Net Tango Incorporated to provide website maintenance and development support for Metro's website, Nashville.gov, and for other Metro governmental agency or department websites as needed, and which will replace the expiring contract between the parties, contract number 432814. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. We do have an amendment that needs moving. Could we have someone to move my amendment? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? I pretty much explained it during the conversation portion, but for anybody who may be tuning in that maybe wasn't watching that portion, in short, what it does is that 3 years from the date of the execution of the contract, the director of ITS, whoever that is at that time, will make an in-person report to the council to basically talk about the performance of the contractor. And at that time, the council and the director of ITS will work together to determine, do we want to extend that contract? If we decide at the 3-year mark we do, then great. If we decide that we don't want to at that point in time, that will give the director 2 years to find a new entity to move forward with. And then again, at 6 months prior to the end of the contract, we will then revisit it to determine if we still want to move forward. So is there any discussion or questions on the amendment? Councilwoman Sorora, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. No, not a question, but I just wanted to add that I had spoken with former Councilmember Dave Rosenberg, who is now on the mayor's administration, and he did confirm everything that has been said about a group that will be looking into this and performing all what they need to do after this contract happens, so that by the time we get into the next one, we'll have all the information that we need. So I'm very grateful that Chair has the amendment to make sure that in 3-4 years, we can look at what the committee has done, what is being done to the website before we decide whether we're going to the next 5 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sora. I also want to highlight too, one thing in the amendment is that Metro government does retain the right of the contract to terminate the contract with 30 days notice. So this does not tie our hands in any way. So I just want to make sure that we highlighted that. Any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Any not voting? I believe we are at 11-0. Excuse me, I believe we're at 11 committee members. Director Darby, do you mind checking that? I believe we're at 11. So if so, we have the amendment passes 11 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. So now we will take up BL 2023-1 as amended. We got a motion. Can we get a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none. Looking at you, Councilmember Huffman. We're not, okay, we're good. All right. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 11 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. And now we are going to kick this over to Gov Ops to Chair Bradford.
Thank you, Chair Porterfield. All right, Government Ops Committee. Don't have to go through and reread everything as Councilman Porter did, so we're just going to go right into it. Do I have a motion on the amendment? All right, and a second? All right. All those in favor of the amendment to BL 2023-1? All right, any opposed, any non-voting? All right, so we've got one opposed. Double check my count there. That's 1, 2. Double check my math, Ms. Darby. I've got 8 in favor, 1 against. Okay. And 0 non-voting. All right, do we have a motion on the bill as amended? And a second? All right. All those in favor of the bill as amended? Not voting? Okay. 8-1-0. Okay. All right. With that, Government Ops has passed the bill as amended.
Thank you so very much. We have one more piece, y'all. My apologies. BL 2023-81 Porterfield Bradford. I am withdrawing that, Director Darby, so there's nothing additional I need to do, right? I'm putting it on the record that I am withdrawing that. Does that also need to be withdrawn from? Perfect. All right. It has been withdrawn from Budget and Finance. And with that, we are done. Thank you all so much for your time.
Gov Ops next.
Just kidding. We now have Budget and Finance. The joint committee meeting is adjourned. Gov Ops will be meeting now. Thank you for your time.